When you look back, I mean, what do you think of the way Pantera records sounded after all these years?
It's funny, we were talking about it last night, and we were talking about the difference between digital recording and recording onto tape. And most of the Pantera records, believe it or not, are absolutely 100% recorded analog on tape. And it's funny because you hear bands today that really have borrowed from the Pantera, quote-unquote, production upgrade that we made in the 90s, but really they're working with Pro Tools and stuff like that, which there's nothing wrong with working with fucking Pro Tools, so to speak, and not in my opinion, but you can still get real sounds recording digitally. I just it's very ironic that the Pantera records, as unique as the drum sounds were with the triggered drums and shit like that before their time was absolutely, before it was totally cool to use triggered drums. And Dimebag, by Vulgar Display, Far Beyond Driven, that huge guitar tone that he had. It was unique, I guess, to come out of that with those sounds on analog.
Yeah.
So, very unique.
Yeah.
It happened.
What were the first things that went through your mind when you heard that original Cowboy sound, Terry Date and Vinny together?
Well, honestly, I was torn at the time because, honestly, this is a little bit of history here. When I first joined the band, Dimebag always had, when you stood in front of his amplifier, he always had this monster fucking tone. But in the late 80s, production and heavy metal production was going through so many changes that capturing a sound from one room and getting it into another room and on tape was a challenge, so to speak. And I think that when we brought Terry on board after we got signed to Atco Records at the time, which eventually turned to Elektra East West, whatever. When Terry got on board, he really helped facilitate getting that sound onto tape. And obviously the first go-around was Cowboys from Hell. So I think that was a good launch pad necessarily, but not the finished product. So I think that, as the records went on, Dimebag's guitar sound got warmer and warmer and more up front, whereas on Cowboys from Hell, like, comparatively, I guess he would have had a more top-end, heavy guitar sound, more sizzly, more high-endy in comparison to something like the last record, Reinventing the Steel, or even Far Beyond Driven. So we've gone through, I guess back in the day, of course, if we're talking about Pantera, we went through all of the growing pains, and all of the growth spurts that we did, all in the name of getting a better balance overall for all the instruments. And it's interesting that as the records went on, from Cowboys to Vulgar to Far Beyond, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you can also hear the bass get warmer as well. So it was always like kind of a constant struggle to get what we would, I guess, consider a perfect mix, which really, that I'm not sure, there is such a thing as an absolute perfect mix, but still, we were always striving to get closer and closer.
Mm-hmm. And where does Great Southern fit in there in terms of the sonics for you, do you think?
That's a bizarre question, too, because that's, to me, I think, a different sounding record. Some people believe that that's our best sounding record or most aggressive sounding record or whatnot. I've heard that and actually heard it recently, and I it's all up to the listener, but on that particular note, I'd have to disagree. Great Southern was unique sounding.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I can put it. Is it our best sounding record, in my opinion? I'm not so sure about that, but it definitely is, out of all of them, kind of unique in its own way.
Yeah.